A luxurious gala. A sudden attack. An unexpected reaction. In a political world filled with controversy, where words can turn into sharp weapons, a confrontation between two prominent figures left the entire hall in stunned silence. As dazzling lights reflected off crystal glasses, a voice rose, not only targeting one man's reputation but also challenging the very values he represented. But instead of reacting as everyone anticipated, our protagonist did something different, something that stunned both the media and the public. Can a moment of confrontation transform into an opportunity to change a generation? Barron Trump stood calm in the grand hall of the Metropolitan Charity Gala as Hunter Biden's voice echoed through the speakers, attempting to humiliate the young heir. Barron's composed gaze, at just 18 years old, shocked everyone. This wasn't the response they expected from Donald Trump's youngest son. Although raised in a wealthy, powerful family, Barron never felt pressured to follow his father's path. From an early age, Donald had taught him, "Your name and money don't define you, it's your actions that matter." Barron always felt the pressure from the public, but he had learned to face every challenge, especially in moments like this. Hunter Biden, on the other hand, had faced different struggles. Raised in a family full of expectations, yet emotionally neglected by his father, Joe Biden, who was consumed by his political career. Hunter's youth was filled with poor decisions and battles with addiction, but those failures led him to understand the value of forgiveness and redemption. As he looked at Barron in this moment, he couldn't help but notice the difference. Barron, with his calm and compassion, did what Hunter had always hoped to do: turn an attack into an opportunity. Hunter sneered into the microphone, "I wonder if Barron even knows what real charity work looks like. Or is he just a kid raised in luxury, knowing nothing but taxes and charity scandals?" The crowd of powerful figures and media personalities shifted uneasily, many already pulling out their phones to record the moment. Barron, tall at 6 feet 6 inches, simply smiled. No arrogance, no confrontation, just silent confidence that instantly changed the room's atmosphere as he walked toward the podium. As Barron approached the podium, whispers spread throughout the hall. Some expected him to explode in the typical Trump fashion. Others feared a public relations disaster. "Thank you, Hunter, for raising an important issue," Barron began, his voice steady and firm. "Yes, I was raised with privilege, and that's exactly why my father taught me that privilege comes with responsibility." Barron continued, patiently letting his words sink deep into everyone in the room. While some talk about change, others quietly do the work. Barron revealed how he had partnered with St. Jude Children's Research Hospital to modernize their donation systems, implementing blockchain technology to improve efficiency. But the next piece of information he shared left Hunter stepping back. "Actually, the veteran support program you praised tonight, the one helping the children of wounded warriors, was initiated through our foundation just last month." Everyone in the room gasped. Hunter's smirk faded as Barron continued, imparting his father's lesson on true leadership. "Leadership isn't about seeking recognition, it's about creating real impact." Barron's words were not just a response, they were a lesson in how to turn confrontation into opportunity, exactly as his father had taught him. As camera flashes went off and social media exploded with the unfolding drama, Barron demonstrated that the next generation of the Trump family wasn't just learning about business and wealth, they were learning composure under pressure and the true meaning of charity. The room fell into stunned silence as Barron continued his speech, his next words even more powerful. "You see, Hunter, while you were preparing your speech to criticize me tonight, I was actually taking the time to meet with families affected by the opioid crisis." The subtle jab at Hunter's personal struggles didn't go unnoticed by anyone. Barron Trump had turned a confrontation into an unexpected moment. But Barron's tone remained calm, free from hostility. He pulled out his phone and held it up. Instantly, numbers flashed on the massive screen behind him. Live data about his latest charity initiative lit up on the black background. In the past 6 months, our youth recovery program has helped over 3,000 teens find a path out of addiction. And yes, some of them come from wealthy families, proving that suffering doesn't discriminate by class or privilege. Hunter Biden shifted slightly in his chair, gripping the armrest, his eyes scanning the screen as if searching for a rebuttal. Meanwhile, around the room, many people lowered their heads, blinking rapidly as Barron told a personal story that left many speechless. Last week, I sat with a 16-year-old boy who lost his father to addiction. He looked at me and said, "Everyone thinks I'll turn out just like my dad." Barron's voice grew stronger, each word clear and unwavering. That statement made me think. Because I know what it's like when people look at you and assume your path just because of your name. But my father taught me an important lesson. A name doesn't define us. Our actions do. The entire room held its breath. All eyes were fixed on Barron as he continued. That's why I'm committing $50 million of my inheritance to build treatment centers in underserved communities. Murmurs erupted immediately. A few people in the room inhaled sharply, while Hunter tilted his head, eyes widening for a moment before returning to his calm demeanor. "And Mr. Biden," Barron said, looking Hunter in the eye, his gaze genuine, void of pretense, "I'd like to invite you to join me in this initiative. Because, while we may carry different last names and have different political views, I believe we both understand the pain that addiction brings to families." The tension in the room began to shift into something else. Not confrontation, but possibility, a glimmer of hope. Some of the donors in the front row grabbed their phones, and several whispered to each other. Even the seasoned political reporters hesitated, putting their pens down, as if in that moment, their usual skepticism had been set aside. But Barron didn't stop there. He stepped down from the podium, his long strides firm and steady as he walked towards Hunter's table. Without hesitation, he extended his hand. "My father also taught me something else. The most important deals are often made when you can look someone in the eye and find common ground." The room fell silent. Hunter Biden sat motionless, his gaze shifting between Barron's extended hand and the young man's unwavering face. A long moment passed. The entire room seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Then, finally, Hunter stood up. The sound of his suit brushing against the chair was faint, but the entire room seemed to stir with that movement. A brief hesitation, and then he reached out, shaking Barron's hand. The flash of cameras was relentless. In that moment, it was captured from every angle. Within hours, the image of the handshake would flood the headlines of every major news outlet. Show America that the next generation can do better, that we can turn personal attacks into collaboration, transform criticism into real action. The applause echoed, not as a polite gesture, but as a thunderous roar, genuine and filled with belief in a future that would be different. And as the night came to a close, the ripple effect from this moment spread beyond the four walls of the gala. Within hours, social media exploded with videos showing Barron Trump turning an encounter into an opportunity for change. After the gala, with the lights dimmed and people beginning to disperse, the atmosphere still lingered with unresolved emotions. Some of the main sponsors of the event, those who had worked alongside Barron on charitable initiatives, gathered in a quiet corner of the ballroom to discuss the impact of the evening. One of them, Richard Hampton, a prominent businessman and someone who had helped Barron expand his network of recovery centers, shook his head disapprovingly. "We built this relationship with a common goal, real change. But now, we've gotten sucked into a media war that leads nowhere. He can't just focus on values, he has to know how to deal with powerful political opponents," he said seriously. Elizabeth Monroe, a longtime sponsor of the Trump family, disagreed. "But Richard, that's Barron's strength. He doesn't rely on tricks or cling to old arguments. Barron showed us how to stay true to our principles even under pressure. Don't forget, doing the right thing doesn't always win everyone over," she said, her expression resolute, though she also harbored concerns about Barron's future in such a cutthroat world. Meanwhile, Barron's family members had different perspectives. Carla, Barron's older sister, was worried about her brother's decision. "Barron, are you sure you're not overdoing it? I understand you want to make a difference, but the way you're handling Hunter, it could put our family in an awkward position." "Not everyone supports this approach," she said in a low voice, eyeing her brother cautiously. Barron was silent for a moment, reflecting on her words. He didn't respond immediately but stared at the reflected light from the glasses on the table. Finally, he spoke softly, I understand what you're saying, but I can't live in the shadow of other people's judgments. I'm not doing this for anyone else but myself and for what I believe is right." At that same moment, a reporter from the Gala, Greg Reynolds, who had interviewed both Hunter and Barron before, shared his thoughts with his colleagues. "I have to admit, I was wrong thinking Barron would just be a family heir and stay distant from social issues. He's got a different strategy than I imagined. This is definitely a story to follow." But deep inside, Reynolds wondered if Barron could maintain this independence and maturity as the political pressures mounted. Finally, a meeting between Barron and Matthew Jacobs, a veteran Trump family donor, concluded the evening in thoughtful silence. "I know you're on the right path, Barron, but sometimes the truth is hard to accept. You'll face a lot of opposition, not just from political opponents, but even from your own family. Good luck, and don't forget, we can't always change the world just by making the right decisions." His words, gentle yet full of doubt, made Barron reflect further on the path ahead. Barron Trump turned a confrontation into real change. But what happened next was even more remarkable. The following morning, major news outlets didn't focus on the public humiliation or political squabble at the Gala. Instead, the headlines were all about how an 18-year-old had done the unthinkable, bridging the gap between two opposing sides. Donald Trump called his son early. His voice came through the phone strong and decisive, yet unmistakably warm. "You did exactly what I taught you. You turned an attack into an opportunity. But you did it your way, classy." Barron smiled, his gaze briefly resting on the reflection in the window. He recalled the countless conversations with his father about handling public pressure, about turning negative situations into fuel for progress. The story took an unexpected turn 3 days later, when Hunter Biden appeared at Barron's next charity event. The crowd fell silent for a moment as he stepped onto the stage, his hands clasped together, his eyes briefly meeting Barron's before scanning the audience. Hunter took a deep breath, his shoulders stiffening slightly before he spoke. "Sometimes, it's the clarity of youth that shows us a better path." His voice was rough, as though each word carried deep reflection. He acknowledged his own struggles and openly expressed his respect for Barron's approach. Together, they announced the launch of the Trump-Biden Youth Initiative, focusing on addiction prevention and supporting youth treatment programs in America. This news immediately shook the political world. Commentators debated fervently, but one thing was undeniable: the public embraced this collaboration positively. Within days, donations poured in from both political sides, proving that some issues were more important than division. Melania Trump later confided in close friends that she had never doubted how Barron would handle his public role. "The boy observes, listens, and then chooses his own path." She explained that Barron had combined his father's sharp business instincts with his own empathy to create a different approach. With his ambitious charitable initiative, Barron couldn't escape the major challenges ahead. From the early days of launching recovery centers for youth, Barron sensed an undercurrent of resistance forming around him. His project faced not only financial and managerial obstacles but also strong opposition from powerful interest groups and companies involved in treatment services, who feared Barron's initiative would undermine their profits. During a crucial meeting with investors and project partners, Barron found himself in a tense situation. One of the directors of a major pharmaceutical company, Alan Crosby, sharply criticized Barron's idea. "You don't understand the consequences of launching initiatives like this, Barron," Crosby said, his gaze challenging. "Your project will hinder our revenue. It will disrupt a system we've spent decades building. You can't interfere in such a thriving industry. Don't dream of an unrealistic future." Barron remained unfazed. Though anger swirled within him, he kept his demeanor calm. He locked eyes with Crosby and said, "I understand that change is never easy. But I also know that if we don't act today, we will allow an entire generation of young people to continue suffering with no way out. I'm willing to face every challenge to bring them a better future. And I believe, if done right, everyone will eventually see the true value we bring." At that moment, a well-known politician from the Republican Party, Richard Lawson, also joined the meeting. He didn't hesitate to criticize Barron's efforts, tying it to a political strategy. You're exploiting the situation to build your personal image. These charitable initiatives are just PR stunts. Your supporters won't feel any real change, Barron. No one will care about these recovery centers if you can't ensure their financial stability. Barron did not back down. Despite the skeptical stares from everyone in the room, he remained steadfast. If I can't make a change right now, then when? If not me, then who will do this? After the tense meeting, Barron returned to his office, feeling the weight of exhaustion and pressure from the relentless confrontations. But he understood that these were merely the first hurdles. People like Mr. Crosby and Mr. Lawson were just a small part of the larger obstacles he would face. In the dim light of his office, Barron knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to confront everything. To create change, sometimes you have to fight, he told himself. And that was only the beginning of the challenges Barron would have to overcome in executing his initiative. The struggles weren't only with companies or politicians, but also internal battles, fighting to not abandon his ideals and commitments in a world full of competition and self-interest. As Barron began implementing his philanthropic initiative, he knew there would be no easy path. Major difficulties hit almost immediately. Building rehabilitation centers for youth required vast amounts of time and resources. Barron faced financial issues, permit processes, and a shortage of experienced personnel in the field. In the early days, he had to constantly collaborate with experts, advisors, and nonprofits to ensure that the projects could be executed effectively. But even then, he faced opposition from many fronts. One of the biggest challenges was the lack of trust from those accustomed to the old system. Traditional charities were skeptical of the blockchain technology Barron wanted to adopt, viewing it as too complicated and impractical. One of the first organizations Barron interacted with was a respected charity in the community, but they were doubtful about implementing the new technology. "You don't understand," Karen Williams, the director of a major charity, said in a tense meeting. "We've been doing things this way for years. Blockchain? It's just a trend. We can't change the entire system just because you think this technology will replace everything." Barron didn't step back. Instead of getting angry, he calmly explained the importance of change and how blockchain technology would optimize the donation process, track funds, and ensure transparency for the projects. He provided real-world examples from other sectors, demonstrating how this technology could create a positive impact, not just in the charity industry but globally. One of the crucial decisions Barron had to make was to search for and collaborate with reputable tech companies to build the system. He relentlessly sought out blockchain developers and experts, persistently convincing them to join his project despite the initial difficulties. Long sleepless nights and tense meetings with donors and partners left Barron exhausted, but he never gave up. A month later, Barron had a working prototype of the system, and when he shared the results with his charity team, the reactions shifted dramatically. Organizations began to better understand the potential of the new technology and recognized that it could help make their projects more transparent and efficient. This was a pivotal moment. It was Barron's passion and perseverance that gradually brought change. Despite facing countless obstacles, he never wavered from his goal. The tense meetings, the opposition from partners, or the financial management difficulties couldn't deter him. Barron always found a way to solve problems intelligently, blending the mindset of a business leader with the heart of a true philanthropist. He understood that great change doesn't come from small steps. It comes from relentless pushing forward, facing challenges with perseverance, and finding creative solutions. And it was through his persistence and drive for change that Barron succeeded in creating a system that helped thousands of families overcome financial struggles and recover from the storms of life. When the first centers began to operate and positive results appeared, Barron realized that, no matter how difficult the battle, as long as he never gave up, good change would always come. Every time he saw the smiles of those who had once struggled with addiction or family issues, Barron grew more confident in the path he had chosen. But the most touching moment occurred a week later when Barron visited one of the youth rehabilitation centers he had funded. A teenage girl approached, her eyes red from crying. Her hands tightly grasped the hem of her shirt as if trying to steady herself. "I watched what you did at that gala," she said, her voice trembling. "You showed me that we don't have to let others decide who we are. Barron nodded lightly, then spent over an hour talking with her, with no cameras, no press. Not to create a media story, but because it was something he truly believed in. As summer turned to fall, the Trump-Biden Youth Initiative had helped hundreds of families. Political analysts noticed a subtle shift in public discussions. When young people demonstrated that cooperation was possible, it became harder to justify ongoing conflict. Barron Trump had not only responded skillfully to a public attack. He had left behind a blueprint for turning conflict into real progress. The impact from Barron's response at the Gala continued to ripple in the months that followed. Major charities began adopting the transparency model and using technology to manage donations, an initiative he had pioneered. More importantly, many young people from influential families began to step into the spotlight, inspired by how Barron used his privilege responsibly. One evening, during a private dinner with his father at Clearwater Manor, Barron leaned back in his chair, his hand lightly grazing the edge of his water glass, as if contemplating everything that had happened. Donald Trump looked at his son, his eyes filled with silent admiration. Barron looked up, meeting his father's gaze. His voice was calm but resolute. "You've always told me that anyone can throw a punch." Barron paused, his hands interlocked on the table, his gaze sharp yet relaxed. "But it takes true strength to extend a hand." Donald Trump nodded slowly, his eyes briefly glimmering with pride. He said nothing immediately, simply observing his son, the one who had not only learned from his lessons but also knew how to adapt them to fit a new era. The media landscape also shifted. Every time reporters tried to drag Barron into political controversies, he would simply tilt his head, offer a light smile, and steer the conversation toward what truly mattered. "We can focus on division," he said, his voice deep but firm. "Or we can focus on solutions." Gradually, that phrase became Barron's signature, a mindset that earned respect even from longtime critics of the Trump family. Months later, in a candid interview, Hunter Biden leaned back in his chair, his hands clasped in front of him, his thumbs lightly rubbing together as he pondered. His voice dropped when he remembered that night at the Gala. "I used to think I would expose his privilege." Hunter exhaled deeply. "But in the end, I was the one who learned a lesson about how to use privilege for good." The interview spread widely, not because of controversy, but because of its sincerity. No avoidance, no excuses, just simple acknowledgement of maturity and change. But perhaps the most important change didn't take place in the public eye. At high-level meetings and charity fundraisers across the country, what became known as the Barron Trump method began to emerge as a symbol, a strategy that exuded calm in the face of conflict but delivered tangible results. The young man once known simply as Trump's youngest son had now carved out his own legacy, not one based on fame or power, but on connecting people and proving that the next generation truly could do better. As winter approached, Barron's initiative had expanded to 20 states and was preparing plans to go global. The teenager who had once stood firm amid a public storm of criticism had transformed a moment of crisis into a meaningful movement, showing that, sometimes, the most powerful response to criticism is to do more good. After Barron succeeded in rolling out his charitable initiatives, a significant international event was held in Washington, D.C. to discuss global solutions to combat youth addiction. This was an event Barron had long been planning, and this time, he was not alone. Among those invited were major figures in politics and society, including Hunter Biden, who had agreed to participate after much thought and discussions with Barron. As Hunter entered the conference room, all eyes turned to him. However, unlike their previous encounter at the Gala, there was no confrontation this time. The two men, one from the Trump family, the other from the Biden family, sat across from each other, no tension, only a shared focus on their common goal. "We can make this happen," Barron began, his eyes shining with confidence. "We all want the future generation to have the opportunity to change, and we will do everything we can to give them a new life, free from society's hidden currents." Hunter nodded, paused for a moment, then said, "Our collaboration could be a turning point for many. That's what I've learned from Barron. Sometimes, unity is the key to solving problems. We can't fight alone, we must set an example together." The room fell silent, a palpable shift in the air, A change in mindset, no longer division but collaboration for a common purpose. The officials, donors, and participants in the conference could all feel the power of this transformation. When Barron and Hunter agreed to sign a cooperation agreement, combining their initiatives to create recovery centers, everyone knew this was the first step in breaking down political, familial, and societal barriers. It sent a powerful message to the younger generation that change doesn't always come from individual decisions, but sometimes from setting aside differences and acting together. From this meeting, a new wave began. Charities, international organizations, and influential individuals started to join the initiative, creating a vast network to assist youths affected by addiction and other social issues. And throughout this process, not only Barron and Hunter but all the participants realized that only cooperation, unity, and persistence could change the future. Finally, Barron turned to Hunter, offering a small smile. "We're setting an example for the next generation." Hunter responded with a determined nod. "And we'll never stop." This was the turning point of the story, not an end, but a new beginning, where barriers were broken down and hope for a better future was built on unity and perseverance. This story is a powerful testament to how moments that seem like failures can turn into opportunities to change an entire generation. If you were in Barron's position, how would you handle this situation? Could you turn criticism into a giant leap forward for promoting positive values? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice might inspire others and lead to positive change. If you find this story meaningful, don't hesitate to share it with your friends and family so that together, we can spread the message of unity, skillful conflict resolution, and responsibility to the community. Thank you for following this story. Let's create change with small, but steady steps to build a better future for everyone. Wishing you endless energy and success.